This episode is brought to you by National Geographic, presenting its new documentary film, Endurance. Follow the greatest survival story ever told, unpacking the legendary feat of polar explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton, who kept his crew alive for over a year, despite losing their ship in frigid pack ice. Over a century later, a team of modern-day explorers set out to find the sunken ship. Endurance, now streaming on Hulu and Disney+.
Hey folks, Christian Swain here, CEO of Pantheon Media, where fans belong. And starting now, Pantheon is where fans invest. You now have the opportunity to own a piece of Pantheon. Equity crowdfunding raises capital from many small investors in exchange for equity shares. We're working in partnership with Start Engine. They're an equity crowdfunding platform registered with and overseen by the SEC. To start, we want to express our gratitude to our amazing fans. As a token of our appreciation, you, our loyal listeners, are first in line for an exclusive opportunity to invest early and grab a piece of the Pantheon action, along with special bonus discounts and perks for joining us at the beginning of this exciting journey. Simply put, rather than donate, like you would with, say, GoFundMe, you're actually purchasing shares of the network. You'll be shareholders, co-owners, right along with us. Together, we've built a vibrant fan community. It started with music, and now we're engaging sports fans too, in a big way. Please consider taking this next step with us to collectively grow and benefit from Pantheon's future success. Go to startengine.com/Pantheon Media to find out more. Again, startengine.com/Pantheon Media. Invest in your passion, invest in your community, consider investing in Pantheon.
Welcome to My Weekly Mixtape, a podcast that takes the classic mixtape approach to building a modern playlist. I'm your host, Brian Colburn. Joining me once again as guest curator is fellow Pantheon Podcast Network mate, Jason Whissell, host of the It's Not That Bad and There Can Only Be One podcast. Jason, welcome back again, my friend.
So happy to be back. You know I love coming on the show. I have so much fun being on these episodes and bringing with me an arsenal, or in this case, a guitarsenal of songs to work with.
Well, tonight's a topic that it's been requested several times since I started this show over a year and a half ago. So I'm glad to finally bring it to fruition. And that is the 90s acoustic / unplugged scene, because make no mistake, it was a scene. It was a movement. For those of us in the US, the words MTV Unplugged became a staple of the decade, with countless memorable and iconic performances, many of which became hit albums for said artists and bands. Now, Jason, you're hailing once again from the Great White North up in Canada. Did the Unplugged movement receive that same push on Much Music?
Oh, absolutely. Like, there was a lot of crossover, and we got to see a lot of those Unplugged concerts. But the reason I'm happy to be on this show today is because this allows me to scratch an itch that I don't get to normally scratch over on There Can Only Be One. So, to anyone who has not listened to that show, where we go through an entire discography's worth from an artist, but we eliminate the live albums. And I'm not going to lie, some of the MTV Unplugged albums that came out in the 90s are arguably my favorite albums from those artists. So not being able to talk about those albums at all, it cuts me a little. It cuts real deep.
Well, tonight you get to scratch that itch. And like always, when you and I do an episode, we kind of throw around some ground rules before we get started to make the show a little easier or / harder on us, depending on how you look at it. And for tonight, those rules are: 1, the song or album had to be commercially released and available on streaming. So sadly, this does eliminate some extremely popular performances, such as Aerosmith's full acoustic set, LL Cool J's massive acoustic Mama Said Knock You Out, Midnight Oil's Beds Are Burning, which I absolutely loved, and Page and Plant's No Quarter Unleaded, because that, as of now, is unavailable on streaming. Now, I have to note, Unleaded is absolutely incredible. It's an amazing 90s album, and you could still find it on CD. However, if you can't find the CD, you can purchase the album digitally. There's a site called Qobuz, which is a site that I use a lot to buy music that's not available on CD or streaming. It's Qobuz if you want to look them up. They also have a high-resolution streaming option as well if you're looking for something outside of Apple Music or Spotify. So that's definitely worth checking out. But unfortunately, Unleaded is off the table for tonight.
Luckily, there are some compilation CDs out there that have covered some of the Unplugged tracks that I was looking for. So I kept to the rules. It had to be available on Spotify to be played. So there are some versions of songs out there that I kind of wish I was able to talk about. And I did try to keep the releases to released or recorded in the 90s. So it handcuffed me a little bit, but I'm here to join the party.
And then I'll add one other thing to that list. We decided to go with songs that were acoustic versions of non-acoustic songs. So you have these amazing unplugged moments like Neil Young's Harvest Moon, the Eagles' Tequila Sunrise, and Dennis Leary's Life's Gonna Suck. I bet you forgot that episode of MTV Unplugged. Anyway, those songs were originally acoustic to begin with. So an acoustic version of an acoustic song kind of felt like missing the mark for this episode.
Yeah, no, the handcuffs are on, but I'm not going to lie. Thankfully, there are some fantastic live performances out there that allowed me to be able to get some of these songs in. Even if the song originally was in the 80s, for me, so long as the recording or the performance was in the 90s, I put it on my list.
Same here. So with that said, let's get down to business. Tonight, as I mentioned at the top of the show, Jason and I will be curating the ultimate 90s acoustic / unplugged mixtape, and we'll use the old cassette deck approach. Jason, as my special guest, will begin side A with his first song choice, and then I'll add a song that I feel best follows up that choice. We'll then flip-flop choosing songs until we've mapped out 10 songs for side A. We'll then give our mixtape a proverbial flip, and we'll map out side B, only this time I'll kick things off with Jason choosing second. Our overall goal for the episode is to craft the best 90s acoustic unplugged mixtape possible through only 20 songs. And at the end of the show, you can take our conversation to the next level by visiting the episode page at myweeklymixtape.com to give our final mixtape a listen via the embedded playlist. And if you like what you're hearing on the show, you can help me out by either telling a friend, leaving the show a 5-star review wherever you're tuning in, or becoming a Patreon mixtaper at patreon.com/myweeklymixtape. There you can find ad-free episodes of the show, chime in on future topics, become a future guest, and so much more. And a few of the Patreon mixtapers chimed in with songs they would use to kick off our acoustic unplugged set tonight, and I want to give a few quick shout-outs. And tonight we're going to start with brand new Patreon mixtaper Brandon from Virginia, who chimed in with the first season of MTV Unplugged and his choice, The Smithereens and Graham Parker doing Behind the Wall of Sleep. Brandon, welcome to the My Weekly Mixtape Patreon family. Glad to have you on board and look forward to talking with you in the Patreon forums. Also coming in from the Patreon mixtapers, Chad Lamassa chimed in saying it's probably a bit obvious, but he doesn't care, and neither would I. He went with Nirvana's cover of David Bowie's The Man Who Sold the World. Jason Donchis chimed in saying that it's a great topic, I couldn't agree more, and that he already has a playlist on his phone dedicated to this, but he chose to avoid the obvious picks and go with a personal favorite of his, that being Blind Melon's Paper Scratcher from the 2 Meter sessions in '93. Philip Bergman also went a little deep, chiming in with Jewel's Cold Song, a B-side of her You Were Meant For Me single. Christopher Pazika chimed in saying he was always partial to Stone Temple Pilots' Plush from MTV Unplugged. Tom Hutchison chimed in with Bush's Come Down off the Australian version of 16 Stone, saying a local DJ in the Detroit area played it every Sunday morning, and it's by far one of his favorites. He also shared in the Patreon a YouTube link to that version, but I'll be sure to include that over on the episode page at myweeklymixtape.com just in case anybody wants to check it out. And I do have to kind of add a little commentary. Why did all the other countries get the bonus tracks? Australia, Japan, Europe, they always got the good stuff. And I always sought out those extra bonus copies. I don't know about you, but that's certainly something I was always looking for imports.
See, I got a bone to pick with, the imports from bands that probably shouldn't be imports. I'm a massive fan of Harem Scarum. They're from Ontario, the Toronto area. Do you think you could find a Harem Scarum CD in the mid to late 2000s that wasn't an import? Nope. Had to pay the extra, but it was Harem Scarum, so it was totally worth it.
100%. And finally, Mike Daly chimed in with what he defers to as an oldie but a goodie, Eric Clapton's Before You Accuse Me from his Unplugged release, saying really any song on the album is a great way to start off an acoustic playlist. Once again, if you want to chime in for future My Weekly Mixtape episodes, you can join the fellow mixtapers at patreon.com/My Weekly Mixtape. So Jason, let's unplug those pedals, turn the amps off, and get this 90s acoustic jam started. What song are you kicking things off with tonight?
Well, now that I've plugged my microphone back in, I can actually get my pick in here. Probably one of the hardest questions you have to think from the 90s is, and this is probably going to spark some debate amongst all of your listeners here, what is the actual best MTV Unplugged CD that was ever released? Some people will say Nirvana, some people will say Stone Temple Pilots, some people will say Kiss. For my money, Alice in Chains had the absolute best unplugged CD of all time. So what better way to start this mixtape than with the song that started that album, Nutshell. Arguably my favorite Alice in Chains song of all time. And if the day ever comes to do it, There Can Only Be One on Alice in Chains, I would be so hurt because I couldn't pick this version of it. And it's not even just the fact that the song is good by itself. There is something about Mike Inez's bass tone on that acoustic bass guitar, the one that said, "Friends don't let friends give friends haircuts." I freaking love that. But there's just something about the way that it's the tone kind of swelled at certain parts of the song. And I was like, that is such a good tone. It's the exact reason why I love the fact that I have an acoustic electric bass guitar of my own, and I have done a few acoustic shows. That song is on the I need to play it somewhere list.
What a great pick. I had Down in a Hole from that album on my song bank. You could pick anything from that Unplugged album. It truly is a snapshot. It's haunting and harrowing to listen to now, with hindsight being 2020, knowing where Lane was headed. But his voice is so powerful. And in the wave of his passing, it makes the album as a whole just feel a little bit darker, a little bit more somber. You could feel the pain coming out of the songs. But oh my God, it's such an incredible performance. One that I think truly set the standard for what people think about when they think about 90s acoustic / MTV Unplugged moments.
Oh, absolutely. And just the falsetto in that song alone. Like, you're kicking off your acoustic performance, your entire concert, with a song that is arguably much more dialed back than a lot of the other songs in that set list. But I mean, that was a statement. That was like we're coming out and we are giving you a mood and a vibe for the show, not just putting on a regular concert. Agreed.
And what I'm going to do to follow that up I'm actually going to go with a curveball for my first pick in the number 2 slot. Now, MTV Unplugged was already a thing in 1989. And there were episodes with Squeeze and the Smithereens and the Alarm, and then that kind of moved into 1990. However, in 1990, this song became the first, that I can recall at least, live acoustic song to start getting played on the radio. And it was played so much, it actually reached number 8 on the Billboard US Hot 100. Now, this song is actually a cover song. The original reached number 3 a couple decades earlier, but when you named the album 5-Man Acoustical Jam, being a nod to the original band, 5-Man Electrical Band, you got to bring Tesla into this. And Tesla's Signs was one of the first songs that I recall being one of those live acoustic songs that really got from the screen on MTV to the radio. And while it might not be the song that jump-started the acoustic movement, I feel like it's one of the most important ones that really showed the labels and the networks we might be on to something here. Now, back on episode 43, I had the honor of having Frank Hannon from Tesla on my weekly mixtape, and he told a great story about Signs. So I'd like to take a moment and just run that short clip now.
We really didn't have an idea that it would blow up, but we did know that we loved the song. And Signs is an example of when a lead vocalist feels the lyrics of a song and they deliver it. You know, Jeff Keith, our singer, loved the lyrics of that song, and we would just goof around on it and play it at radio stations. And we were goofing around at a radio station in Boston, and we played Signs and goofing around, and they recorded it. From that particular recording, their telephone started ringing. People were calling them and saying, "Hey, we want to hear that song Signs again." And so we did get a notion that people loved the song and they could feel that Jeff, our singer, was delivering it. And so that's when we decided that, well, heck, let's release it from that Philadelphia show. And then the rest is history.
Now, if you want to hear more about 5-Man Acoustical Jam, there's a lot more discussion on episode 43, so I highly suggest going back and giving that episode a listen. But I kind of wanted to start with a little bit of a curveball, and I feel like this is one that a lot of people listening to this episode might go, I didn't even think about that one.
Oh, I thought about that album. I thought about that album a lot. And, you know, our good friend Sean Faust joined me on There Could Only Be One to go through the entire Tesla discography. And this was one of the few episodes where we're like, you know, we say no live albums, but we're going to make an exception in this case. And rightfully so. Like, it really was kind of the kickoff point that, you know, MTV and VH1 looked and says, that actually sounds pretty damn good and it works. Let's do more of that and let's start putting out those CDs. But the thing about 5-Man Acoustical Jam is that it didn't feel somber. It felt like a fun hangout kind of show. Like, you could hear them kind of joking with each other on stage. The fact that they did the surprise song on that album, dear listeners, you have to now go and listen to Surprise. That's pretty much the entire song, but it's fun. It's absolutely fun. And their cover of Mother's Little Helper on that album is also so good. And yeah, that's one of those albums that I think, and we kind of talked about this before recording the show, there were certain albums that needed to be brought up on this show, or else we were going to have a trios episode again where it's like, are you going to take Rush? Are you going to take Rush? Are you? And no one did. So thankfully, we've got the 5-Man Acoustical Jam album off the docket early. Please, listeners, put the torches down. We got you covered.
And I will say that is an awesome episode with Sean Faust of There Can Only Be One. If you're a Tesla fan, make sure to check that one out too. I know Tesla's a little bit more on the bluesier, hard rock side of things, coming out of the grunge of Alice in Chains. I could have really leaned into the grunge, but I feel like the Unplugged movement covered a wide swath of genres, and I kind of wanted to set you up to go anywhere you wanted from here. So we've got Alice in Chains Nutshell, we've got Tesla's Signs. Where do we go from here?
Well, now we've got an acoustic version of a song from Firehouse off of their 1996 Good Acoustics album. I'm going to go with their version of Don't Treat Me Bad.
Yeah,
it's a fantastic song to begin with, but listening to the acoustic version and the fact that it sits kind of in a lower register vocally, it actually adds a bit more coziness to the song, and it becomes more of a, I don't want to say a coffee house jam vibe, but I'm going to say it's a bit more of a coffee house jam vibe. It feels like the kind of song you would hear with an acoustic group playing at a brewery or something like that, and people just sitting down having a good beer. Personally, I think it made Don't Treat Me Bad, which was already a good song, even better.
I love the fact that you went with this. You not only scooped the album, you scooped the song. It's my favorite Firehouse song. We're still all getting over the sad and tragic passing of CJ Snare this year. Such a monster vocalist. And you're right. This was, when I first heard it, I'm like, oh, wow, they kind of tuned this down a little bit. But as an album, Good Acoustics, it's not live. It's an actual studio acoustic album, which I don't know how much of that's going to get represented tonight, because there weren't as many of those as there were the live ones, which created more quote unquote events and moments. But oh, thank you for picking that, because that gives me a little bit more room to play around here with some other songs I wanted to dive into.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, as soon as I saw the track listing on Good Acoustics, I went to first take a listen to, Love of a Lifetime and All She Wrote, because All She Wrote is my favorite Firehouse song of all time. But I'm like, no. Don't Treat Me Bad actually elevated from the original version. So had to put that one here.
And we should also, because we are talking about Firehouse, mention that there is a spin, shuffle, skip episode where you and I dive into the self-titled Firehouse album, which unfortunately we had recorded prior to CJ's passing, but it's still a great celebration of an incredible album.
Oh, absolutely. And I still spin that disc today. It's that good.
Oh, man. All right. We went with a couple of songs that might fall under the kind of 80s side of things. So I'm going to bring us back to the 90s and go all in on the 90s. And I think I'm going to do one that is going to put a smile on a lot of listeners' faces, definitely overseas for sure, and as well as across the U.S. But I'm going to go with a little bit of a deeper pick here again. And this was originally released as a B-side for this band. And the single was not included on their hit album. I don't want to say the name yet because I kind of want to lead into it. As well as a few years later, this band put out a B-sides compilation and again didn't include this song. And it just so happens to be one of my favorite songs from the band, period. And that single, as any person who has played in a cover band or owns an acoustic guitar is familiar with, is Wonderwall. And we're going to go with an infamous MTV Unplugged performance, maybe the most infamous one, because Liam Gallagher, depending on who you talk to, either showed up with A, a sore throat, or B, completely schnockered. Depending on who you ask, it's all out there in the brothers' ongoing saga of the decades. But hey, we are in a world where Oasis is coming back in 2025. The song I'm going to go with is Round Our Way, which, while the MTV Unplugged concert was never officially released, on the deluxe edition of What's the Story Morning Glory, they included this MTV Unplugged version. And, we all know the story. Noel took lead vocals for the entire night. I actually really enjoyed the set. Hearing his take on the lead vocals was actually a lot of fun, even with Liam drinking and smoking and heckling him from the audience. I'm actually shocked that, like I said, this was a B-side. This has a great horn section in it. It's so much fun. It's got this power pop vibe. And I also want to take a moment to give a shout out to Kuya Ozzy over on the My Weekly Mixtape Discord channel, because we've been talking about this Oasis reunion for a while over there, and I hope he does get the chance to see them next year. Hopefully Oasis will take this tour to the US and give him that opportunity. I don't think you could talk about the 90s Unplugged and not talk about this performance in the discussion. And this was kind of my only way around it. This would have fallen under the off limits had they not tacked this one amazing, just so happens to be my favorite Oasis song from that performance on the deluxe edition.
Look, you can like Oasis or you can not like Oasis, but you cannot deny that they had some good songs, and those songs have lasted the test of time. The fact that we're still talking about those songs and we're still kind of humming them along. Like, I know people are going to sit there and go, oh, great, Wonderwall again. But no. The reason why it still gets listened to today is because it is still a good song.
Anytime we've started the opening chords to Wonderwall, which we refer to as Wonder Wheel, if anybody remembers the movie The Toy with Richard Pryor, as soon as that opening note hits, people's faces light up. So whatever stigma is wrapped around that song, I've seen the opposite playing this song live. People love that song.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a reason why people are still like, play Wagon Wheel, play Freebird. Doesn't matter if the song is overplayed. If the song is good, people will still get up and sing and dance. That is the power of a song. Now, 2025 still feels a long ways away, so I'm sure the Gallaghers still have a chance to screw this reunion up. But I know where I'm going with this. And I'm going with an album that was released in the end of the decade. And it's a band that I guarantee you will never get back together, because the lead singer has said, no, it's not going to happen. Off of the Neon Ballroom album from Silverchair, I'm going to go with the acoustic version of Anna's song.
Ooh.
I have talked about how good Neon Ballroom is before. And when we did the Trios episode, I had to drop Emotion Sickness because that is a fantastic song. Anna's song is probably the second best song on the album, personal opinion. But the acoustic version, again, much like how Firehouse elevated Don't Treat Me Bad with the Good Acoustics album, Anna's song sounds better acoustic, like a lot of songs do, but it is probably their best ballad that they've ever released.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And I'm so impressed that you've been kind of weaving outside of the live performances angle with some of these picks. That's one that as soon as you said the band name, I went, how did I forget that? Because sometimes in the US, they would tack on an acoustic version at the end. Not always, usually went to the overseas albums, but every now and then we got lucky. And this is one of those instances. And God, Neon Ballroom might be my second favorite Silverchair album versus Frog Stomp.
Oh, it's better than Frog Stomp. Personal opinion, it's better than Frog Stomp. It's better than Freak Show. There isn't a better Silverchair album than Neon Ballroom. But again, that's personal opinion.
Well, I'm going to see your Silverchair, and I'm going to keep with the S's for a while here. And I'm going to go with a song that is a kind of a rearrangement of the original. Because the one thing I liked about the Unplugged movement is bands got a chance to kind of flip a song on its side and see how the reaction went. And sometimes it was a miss, and sometimes it blew people's minds. And this is one where it blew my mind, because the original of this song is fast and furious with a killer electric guitar riff. But on this MTV Unplugged version, it's pulled back with violins replacing the lead guitar and slowed down to take a fast and heavy song, Somebody to Shove, and turn it into an acoustic ballad from their 1993 MTV Unplugged performance, as well as on their now complete Unplugged NYC 93 release. We're going to go with Soul Asylum's Somebody to Shove. You very easily could have went with Black Gold or Runaway Train. That was a little bit more suited to the acoustic sound of the Unplugged era. But Somebody to Shove was the unexpected twist in that performance that, as much as I loved Grave Dancers Union, when I heard and saw this performance on MTV, I became a bigger Soul Asylum fan, hands down. Because here was now a version of the song that was just as good as the original, but you can listen to on a chill mixtape, which it just blew my mind at the time.
Yes, scooped me on that one. That is a fantastic song. I love that song. I love this version of that song. And you're right, the violins just add so much more to it. It's funny because I was listening to a bunch of the songs on my Spotify, and as I was trying to come up with my list, and all of a sudden Within Temptation came on, because me, I love my dramatic rock, especially from overseas. And Dave Perner actually does a fantastic duet with Temptation on the song The Whole World Is Watching. That reminded me, it's like, oh yeah, Soul Asylum's got some good acoustic stuff as well. So I had that on my list, and it's like, yep, no, you scooped me. you bloody well scooped me on that one. I know you're not sorry, but
I mean, look, hey, we agreed on the song, so at least there's that.
Oh, there was no denying that was going to be on my list, because it is arguably one of my favorite Soul Asylum songs of all time, but it had to be on the list. Agreed.
So what are we going to follow that up with?
Well, I know exactly where I'm going to go. But it might not be the song that you're probably thinking. When we talk about those all-time MTV Unplugged albums, Nirvana definitely has to be in the mix. But I'm not going to go with Where Did You Sleep Last Night? And I'm not going to go with All Apologies, the song that gets played all the time. I'm going with the absolute second most haunting version of the song, Something in the Way.
Ooh.
This song got darker with this performance. And really, it took the Batman to make it even that much darker. But with the solo cello performance on this, it just adds so much. And I've had a chance to play this song live. And after hearing the MTV Unplugged version, I'm like, if I ever play this again, it needs to be on an upright bass as opposed to an electric bass, because that just adds so much to it.
You definitely, I mean, there was no way we were not talking about Nirvana's MTV Unplugged. I did have Where Did You Sleep Last Night on my list. I mean, the performance as a whole, from start to finish, almost the funeral-like setting. It's up there with Alice in Chains as this iconic, haunting, powerful moment. But they didn't just trot out the hits. They played a couple of songs that were hit songs. They did Come As You Are. They did About a Girl. They did All Apologies. But then they go and do 3 Meat Puppet songs in the middle of the set. They do the cover of David Bowie's The Man Who Sold the World that Chad LaMassa chimed in with. This was a important moment in Nirvana's career. A sad closing for the band, but a statement of an album that showed that Nirvana was so much more than just one of those grunge bands. And God, Something in the Way is, for where you placed it on this side, is so perfect. And I want to keep with that, because we kind of went from that upbeat, Don't Treat Me Bad, Round Our Way. Then we started bringing it down a little bit with Anna's song, and then more with Somebody to Shove, and then Something in the Way. It's hard to go much darker, but I think another iconic performance that might be able to summon that same spirit, if you will, was from 1992's MTV Unplugged. And we're going to go with Pearl Jam's Black. This wasn't released as a solo release for the band until Record Store Day of 2019, and then it finally came out on CD and streaming a year later. But I think about that second verse where Eddie Vedder changes the melody of the lyrics. I take a walk outside, I'm surrounded by some kids at play, and he just screams it. This version, it's chilling, and it's the gold standard, because when Aaron Lewis of Stained covered the song, he uses that MTV Unplugged delivery in his cover. Eddie Vedder's vocals on this rendition are so powerful and so visceral that this version is just as heavy as the studio version from 10 without the distortion. And to me, that speaks volumes for where this band was dialed into musically, as well as the emotion they brought out of this performance. I also had Porch, depending on where our playlist was going, because that version of Porch kicks all sorts of ass as well. But coming out of Something in the Way, Black just feels like a perfect spot here.
I didn't have any other song but Black on my list from that performance, because to me, when it comes to 10, and I know you love that album, there is no other song but Black on that. Yes, I recognize Even Flow's good. Yes, I know Jeremy's. The whole album is good. I'm not saying the album isn't good, but Black, to me, off that one, cements that album as more than just Seattle grunge. There was dynamics to this. There was a depth to Black, and it just added so much. And the acoustic version of it, like, this is the one song that needed to be played dark and acoustic off that album out of their entire discography. And yeah, you scooped me. You bloody well scooped me.
Well, I'm not going to lie. We're actually scooping each other a lot on this side so far, down to the song, which doesn't usually happen with you and I. We usually surprise each other with scooping the band, but kind of going with a different song.
Well, it's time to pick it back up, I think. Because we've brought down the mood a little bit. You know, we've got the crying towels out. It's time to pick it up a little bit. And I'm going to go with a song that, while there weren't many performances of their performance on MTV Unplugged that's out there, it's only about 3 songs that are available acoustically. But Dangerous by Roxette, this song all of a sudden had a fun jam style to it. Like, it's just the two of them. But when you listen to it and you listen to them singing, you can almost hear the smiles as they're singing. This is the kind of song that works well in a stripped down acoustic setting. And it sounds like it's in a small room performance, and it's fantastic.
What an incredible pick. And I'll be perfectly honest, I did not know that there was a version available on streaming of that. I vividly remember recording and watching that MTV Unplugged performance by Roxette, and I loved it. I had no idea that any of those songs were available on streaming. So you just kind of blew my mind right there.
It's on Spotify. You can add it to your liked songs now, you know, along with the other probably 10 or 20,000 songs you have already liked.
Okay. So I got to close out side A, and we've kind of gone a little bit all over the place here. And you scooped me with Alice in Chains at the beginning. However, there are always workarounds, and I've got a workaround. And to close out the side, you talked about Roxette's Dangerous being a little jammy. I'm going to go with one that's a lot jammy. It's almost 10 minutes of jammy. And this was done in 1997 during the Don't Call Us, We'll Call You radio broadcast on KSJO. And it was immediately bootlegged and pressed on those live import, I'm using quote marks in the air, those CDs that you'd find in the racks for $25 or $30 at your local CD stores at the time. There was one out there called Acoustica. But about a year later, on 1998's Garage Inc., Metallica put it out officially. And again, I'm going with a cover song. You know me and my covers. But this cover featured Metallica with Lynyrd Skynyrd's Gary Rossington, Corrosion of Conformity's Pepper Keenan, Blues Travelers' John Popper, Primus's Les Claypool, and in a nod to the first song on the playlist, Alice in Chains' Jerry Cantrell. I'm going with Tuesday's Gone, their cover of the Lynyrd Skynyrd classic. I was lucky enough to see Metallica perform their Garage Inc. show at the Roseland Ballroom as part of their Garage Barrage tour. It was by far probably the largest band I've ever seen in a small venue, except for Linkin Park at the Birch Hill nightclub before Hybrid Theory truly exploded. Sadly, they didn't perform Tuesday's Gone at this show, but the set list they did play that night, which was nothing but covers, and it actually featured a Metallica cover band, Battery, opening the show. I don't know if Tuesday's Gone would have jived with a set list that featured So What, Die Die My Darling, Merciful Fate, Last Caress, Green Hell. I think the slowest they went was Turn the Page that night, and that was the single at the time. But Tuesday's Gone was the moment on Garage Inc. that really blew my mind, because this was Metallica kind of being a jam band and letting John Popper kind of run with a harmonica solo in a Metallica song. This was different. This was something that they never went back to. And I feel like it was an important part of Metallica, and I think a cool way to close out the side, kind of circling back with that little nod to Alice in Chains at the beginning of the side here.
See, you threw me for a loop here, because the minute you said Acoustica, I'm like, whoa. The 2001 Scorpions Acoustica album isn't on Spotify. Plus, it was also recorded in 2001. The minute you said Acoustica, I'm like, oh, he's going there. Because on that album by the Scorpions is a cover of Drive by the Cars. And
Yes.
I'm like, had it not been recorded in 2001, that should have been on your list. But no, you're right. Like when a band, especially a band like Metallica, goes out and does covers, and I know you love your covers. Covers are fun, and covers is a nice way of letting the fans kind of see your musical influences. So to see a band do a full covers show, that would be fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Very, very memorable. It aired on MTV and is available on YouTube to watch it in its entirety. So I'll make sure to post that concert on the episode page at myweeklymixtape.com if you would like to check it out. But there you have it, folks. Side A of our 90s Acoustic Unplugged mixtape, which kicked off with Alice in Chains' Nutshell, Tesla's Signs, Firehouse, Don't Treat Me Bad, Oasis, Round Our Way, Silverchair's Anna's Song, Soul Asylum's Somebody to Shove, Nirvana's Something in the Way, Pearl Jam's Black, Roxette's Dangerous, and Metallica's Tuesday's Gone. Head over to myweeklymixtape.com to hear all the songs we've discussed in this mix through the playlist embedded on the episode page. And now we are flipping the tape over to side B, and I get to kick things off. And you kicked things off on side A with an iconic MTV Unplugged performance, but you went with an album opener. And you know I love my album openers just as much as I love my cover songs. Now I'm going to cause some controversy with this pick. I know it, because I'm going to bring up one of the most iconic MTV Unplugged performances of all time. And I'm not going to go with the song that everybody thinks. And I'm going to go from 1995's MTV Unplugged and their 1996 Unplugged album, the first non-alive Kiss live album. And I am going to go with a Kiss track, but I'm not going to go with the reunion songs. I'm not going to go with Rock and Roll All Night. I'm going with the album opener, Coming Home, which was originally on Hotter Than Hell. And I will tell you right now, I like the version on Unplugged more than Hotter Than Hell. It is amazing. Paul Stanley's vocals on it are incredible. I love the performance. And I know there's Kiss fans out there right now who are screaming at the top of their lungs that I didn't bring up the iconic pairing that would lead into the 1996 reunion tour that I was so lucky to be able to see on New Year's Eve in New Jersey in 1996 at the Continental Airlines Arena, where the band played Rock and Roll All Night that aired on Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve. I got to see Kiss live on the reunion tour, and yet I picked a song that had no reunion members on it. This was the current members of Kiss, but Coming Home was such a great little precursor to what was about to happen at the end of the show, and such a great opener for the MTV Unplugged album that I feel like, yeah, let's stir up some shit tonight. Let's cause some controversy. Kiss, Coming Home from Unplugged.
See, there's no question you scooped me on the album, but you didn't scoop me on the song. But I'm with you. I didn't go with any of the reunion songs either. I had two on my list. I had Going Blind, because I love that song.
Great
and
tune.
I Still Love You.
Oh my God, yes.
The best Paul Stanley live performance ever. That whole album. Yes. Alive 2, Alive 3. They're good. They're good. Unplugged is their best live performance, period. Bruce Kulick, for my money, if I'm putting together like the Dream Kiss lineup, Bruce Kulick is on guitar. And I'm cool with either Eric Carr or Eric Singer on drums, because they're both fantastic. That was when Kiss was firing on literally every cylinder. The Revenge lineup was, to me, the best Kiss lineup, bar none. And that performance, I know it led into the reunion, and that was cool. And we got Psycho Circus out of that. I wanted more of that Revenge lineup. And yes, we did get that with Carnival of Souls, which was kind of like half released and half finished. But to me, that was the best Kiss.
I'll tell you right now, it is thundering like a mofo outside right now. I'm not sure if it's bleeding into my mic or not, but I don't know if it's because of the actual weather or if you and I are just pissing off the Kiss gods so much with our wild fan theories here. But I will 100% agree with you that I Still Love You is an incredible live performance from that album. I just felt like starting off a side with a power ballad might have been a little aggressive, even more so than going with the album opener.
I think it's a great way to start the side. Absolutely. And I know exactly where I'm going to go from here. And I'm going to go with another MTV Unplugged performance. And it's not a band that I normally would have found myself listening to. But when 10,000 Maniacs put out their cover of Because the Night, the Springsteen and Patti Smith cover song that they did, like, I wasn't as familiar with 10,000 Maniacs as, maybe I should have been. But their cover of Because the Night, this to me solidified that it wasn't just your standard rock kit bands that could pull this off. 10,000 Maniacs brought it and then some with that performance, and it really kind of opened my eyes to their full discography after that.
Natalie Merchant is a treasure. Her voice is incredible. This performance, I think, introduced 10,000 Maniacs to a lot of people. They had plenty of hits prior to MTV Unplugged, or else they would have never had an MTV Unplugged. But this cover introduced them to so many people that went back and discovered 10,000 Maniacs. And I'll be perfectly honest, I am one of those people. I was not a 10,000 Maniacs fan until Because the Night. So I love the pick. I think it's the perfect song to kind of be a snapshot of the MTV Unplugged era, because it was one of those moments, just like the Kiss album. And I think coming out of that, I'm going to go with a song that musically is going to continue that 10,000 Maniacs vibe, but also pivot things, I'd say, in a unique way. Now, we've talked about MTV Unplugged a ton so far, but we haven't talked about VH1 Storytellers And that's another huge piece of 90s televised concert nostalgia, if you will. So from their acoustic VH1 Storytellers performance, but released on 1998's Across a Wire live in New York City, I'm going to go with the Counting Crows' Rain King. Now, this version takes a song that is originally upbeat, happy, that jangly 90s pop, and it reinvents it as a slow, mellow ballad. And let me tell you, if you listen to the studio version of Rain King from August and everything after, and then follow it up with this version, you're getting two entirely different experiences. This version brings out the, storytellers, story in the lyrics, and the vocal harmonies are front and center, and they're just, I'll say it, they're beautiful. Something you don't get listening to the original studio cut, because you're likely up dancing and getting lost in that version's experience. Colburn and Company covers Rain King all the time, but it all depends on the setting. We have both versions of this song locked and loaded and ready to go in our set list, because if it's a quiet set one and people are just sitting at their tables at a winery sipping wine, we break out the Across a Wire version because it gets people kind of looking up at the stage and kind of acknowledging that this is a song they know, but it almost makes them go, that's a Counting Crows song. But if they're already drunk and up and dancing by the time we're playing, we go with the original studio cut. So this is kind of similar to what I was saying about Soul Asylum's Somebody's Shove on side A, only this time we're not taking a heavy song and flipping it on its side. It's taking an upbeat, happy song and just kind of mellowing it out, bringing it down to a musical simmer, I guess you want to call it. Now, unfortunately, every time I've seen the Counting Crows live, I've seen them do the OG studio version. But let me tell you, man, what I would give to hear the Across a Wire slowed down version of Rain King live. Oh, my God.
To me, there are certain albums that were almost created with MTV Unplugged and VH1 Storytellers in mind. And August and Everything After is kind of that. Very similar to how when you listen to Tori Amos's Little Earthquakes, that seemed to be almost tailor-made for that acoustic experience. And August and Everything After definitely has that feel. You can say the same thing too, a little bit too, while it's a little bit heavier, Seven Mary Three's Rock Crown kind of fits into that, tailor-made for an acoustic experience. Now, I will be honest that you did scoop me on the album because I did have Round Here on my list.
Another good one.
However, also beside that note on my list is, but it's Counting Crows and it's Brian, so you cannot scoop him like you did on the Trios episode to Sean with the Tea Party. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry, but I wasn't going to take the Counting Crows from you.
Well, I appreciate that, sir, but I want to take this moment then to mention when I guested on There Can Only Be One for your Counting Crows episode, Across a Wire being a live album wasn't in contention for the discussion. But had we made an exception, because you made the exception with Sean on Tesla, so I don't know. I maybe I should have pushed a little harder for this one, but Rain King would have been my only one pick.
Well, I think when you take a look at Five Man Acoustical Jam, you kind of have to make the exception for that album, given the impact on Tesla's career that it had. You know, so Sean got the +1 for that one, but he got the -1 for the Tea Party. So I guess we're even on that one.
Yeah, it all balances out in the end. Okay, so now we've got Kiss, 10,000 Maniacs, and Counting Crows. It's quite the trio in and of itself right there. Jason, where do you go from here?
You know what? For all the times that I have been on your show, I have not had a chance to pick one singer that has always been one of my go-tos. And I've probably seen this artist live more times than any other artist I've seen. And that's Chris de Burgh. So I'm going to go with his 1995 album, Beautiful Dream. So what he did with this album was he went into the studio and brought a full orchestra in and did covers and acoustic versions of some of his older songs. So for my pick, I'm going to go with a song of his that he redid called Snows of New York. It is massive, absolutely massive song. The orchestra sounds great on it, but if you like your covers, there are some fantastic covers on here, including his cover of John Waite's Missing You and the Beatles' Girl, which was actually the second song I had on there, but I'm going to put a little Krista Berg on the tape with Snows of New York.
Going with some Krista Berg, I actually really love that cover of Missing You. That is a fantastic cover. Shocked you went with Snows of New York, I'm not going to lie. That is a very interesting pick here, a very interesting choice.
Oh, it was a fantastic album. It was a fantastic tour. And I think the thing with Snows of New York is that it wasn't one of those songs that I already knew. It was one that I was familiar enough with, but it didn't really leap off the album originally when it first released. On this one, with the orchestra, and that tour was fantastic. The fact that he had a string section with him on tour, which he doesn't normally do, more often than not, when I've seen him, it's just been literally him and an acoustic guitar or a piano, which are fantastic performances. I've seen him with a full band as well. He is fantastic live. Actually, it's funny. I saw him only about 2 years ago, so not that long ago. And, he's a little long in the tooth, but he still puts on a great show, especially when he gives the security the what for to make sure that people are still allowed to dance. So Krista Berg, still rock and roll.
I think I'm going to lean into that rock and roll and go with another iconic MTV Unplugged moment, because something that we haven't talked about yet is the fact that a lot of these Unplugged performances reintroduced classic rock artists to a new generation. I don't want to say so much the Kiss performance. I feel like people knew who Kiss was, but there were artists that it really introduced people and reintroduced a new generation to an artist. And I think one of those would be back in 1992 when this single went to number 12 on the US Billboard Hot 100. And this was the kind of rendition that MTV Unplugged was made for. An artist takes a song that everybody knows, in this case, Derek and the Dominoes, and the original artist, Eric Clapton, goes and flips it on its ear. Hell, even on the album, he says, "See if you could spot this one," before he starts the opening riff to Layla. And this version of Layla is so unique to the original, it became a hit in and of itself. And the band he had on stage with him for that performance was top notch. Being a Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers fanatic, Steve Ferrone was on drums. And then you have Chuck Leavell playing a ridiculously underrated piano line throughout this entire song that both fills and flourishes throughout the song and complements what Eric Clapton's doing on acoustic guitar. I would safely say that this specific version introduced maybe a lot of our generation to Eric Clapton's music, because I vividly remember having conversations in high school with friends, and they were saying, I just got this CD and my parents knew half the songs on it. So I feel like this was one of those moments, at least for me, where I could bond with my parents musically and also feel like I was quote unquote in touch with modern music, because here it was, a hit again.
How do you take a song that's arguably one hell of a rocker? Because the original Derek and the Dominoes version, that's got some swagger to that with the guitar, and especially the piano end that you have to think kind of inspired the ending of Zizek's Road by Stone Sour. But then you take it and you flip it on its head into almost like a jazz swing style. And that's fun. I love when bands take a song and then they're like, yeah, you know it, but now you got to know it this way. At first, I'll be honest, I wasn't as familiar with Derek and the Dominoes as I was after Eric Clapton's Unplugged performance. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, this is a good song. It's got a cool swing to it. It's all good. And then you hear the original. It's like, oh, they went there. And personally, I think I prefer the Unplugged version, but I think I know where I'm going to go with this one. And I need to go to one of those CDs that's a little bit of a saving grace right now. So there was a series of CDs that were released, and they are available on Spotify, called Released the Human Rights Concerts. And they are a collection of live acoustic performances. And on one of them is an acoustic live performance of In Your Eyes from Peter Gabriel and Youssou N'Dour. It's probably the best Peter Gabriel song out there, period. B, the CDs have live performances from the likes of Alanis Morissette, Shania Twain, Radiohead. There are some fantastic live acoustic performances on those. I think there's at least 3 CDs that are available on Spotify. So definitely go and check them out. But I mean, if you who doesn't like In Your Eyes? That not only is it a staple of 80s movies, but live, that song is fantastic.
What a great pick. When you think about songs that were meant for the acoustic rendition, In Your Eyes, because the original has that kind of 80s sheen on it. And when you strip all that back, you realize what an incredible, I don't think it's a big shock to people out there. I might be blowing some minds, but Peter Gabriel knows how to write some good songs. Like, you could go all the way back to Genesis and realize that. But when you strip out the 80s sheen on the version of So and you take it to what it is, this is a brilliant, brilliant song. And to strip it down like this, and it feels so personal and so vulnerable, even more so than the version that everybody knows in Say Anything when John Cusack is holding up the boombox over his head. Imagine this version being played at that moment in the movie.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, now, admittedly, I'm a sucker for the Secret World live version of the song because, of course, he had Paula Cole on tour with him as the backup vocalist. And that version of Don't Give Up with her singing, like, Kate Bush is good. Don't get me wrong. Paula Cole live with Peter Gabriel will take your breath away.
Incredible vocalist. She is just unbelievable. All right. I want to bring us back into the 90s a little bit. I feel like this side's been touching a little bit classic Rocky. And I want to remember this is a 90s episode. So we got to go with one that is distinctly 90s. And I feel like I haven't given as much love to the Patreon mixtapers this episode as I should. And I feel like Christopher Pazika nailed it with his song choice. So let's just go off their 1994 MTV Unplugged performance, released on the deluxe edition of Core, finally. That would be Stone Temple Pilots and Plush. The DeLeo brothers shine in this version. In the original, the guitars are grungier and sludgier, and they almost mask each other. And the vocals kind of become the forefront. Now, don't get me wrong. Scott Weiland's vocals on the acoustic version are incredible. But when you listen to Dean's nuanced guitars, when he's playing the chords to Plush acoustically, and you hear the separation between that and Robert's, I'll just say it, incredible bass line shining through on this performance, people kind of discount Stone Temple Pilots a lot. And I don't think they realize just how ridiculously talented the DeLeo brothers are. And in this version, I think it truly shows just the insane amount of talent that this band had. This almost brings out a Beatles-esque nature to a song that when you listen to the original, you might not think that. There's other songs in the STP catalog that you'll go, oh, I hear a little bit of the Beatles influence. I hear a lot of it. But on Plush, people automatically go to that grunge sound. But this acoustic version, it's hidden in there, and it's beautiful.
Oh, yeah, no, I had Creep from that performance on my list for sure. And really, Stone Temple Pilots are just freaking fantastic live, and having a chance to see them in a couple of different incarnations. I never got to see the Scott Weiland version, but I did see the Jeff Gutt version, and I did get a chance to see them with Chester Bennington at the Shindig Festival in Baltimore. And that was in hindsight, it's one of those things where I'm like, thank God I got to see that performance, because Chester Bennington was fantastic with them.
That was the one iteration of the band I did not see. I did see Scott Weiland with the band. Unfortunately, it was during one of the more tumultuous tours where he wasn't at his best. He had moments, and then there were moments where you could see the brilliance, and then there were moments where you could see the sad side of it. I have seen them with Jeff Gutt, and Jeff Gutt is an incredible performer, and he's really carrying the torch for the band now. And I feel like, again, the DeLeo brothers are ridiculously talented. Stone Temple Pilots have put out fantastic original material. The self-titled album with Jeff Gutt, to me, is right up there with some of the band's best. And I know I'm probably, again, pissing some people off, some purists, but the band is ridiculously talented. And that version of Creep was also on my list, especially because there was that moment in the second verse where Scott goes up with the "think you're kind of neat, then she tells me I'm a creep, friends don't mean a thing," and he goes high the way that Eddie Vedder does in Black. Oh, I love those moments.
I feel like I'm doing my country a disjustice if I don't make a slight, not a hard left turn, just a slight left turn. And I have to bring up Alanis Morissette's Unplugged performance. And I'm going to go with Head Over Feet. Probably one of my favorite songs from her, right up there with Forgiven. The acoustic performance is fantastic. But, and I'm just going to put this out there, if you are an Alanis Morissette fan, you need to go see the stage performance of Jagged Little Pill. It is amazing. Got a chance to see it in Toronto, and I was blown away. Because I'll admit, I'm not exactly the biggest, like I don't go out and immediately put an Alanis Morissette album into the CD player. The stage play changed that, because what they did with the songs, especially Head Over Feet and Forgiven, it brought new life to them. And you don't often get that almost second or third life. You hear the album, okay, it's cool. You see some of the videos, sometimes that changes your opinion and brings them to life. You hear it live, like in Unplugged, it's fantastic. But then the stage play, an entirely different life. And if you like Alanis, you will love the show. Even if you don't like Alanis, but you just happen to like live theater, you're going to have a fantastic time.
I have not sadly seen the show. It's on my bucket list to see, but thank you for scooping me on Alanis Morissette Unplugged, because that makes my last choice very easy. Talk about squeezing the 90s down to the last drop. This album actually was released November 9th, 1999. So, I mean, talk about getting it in right in the nick of time. I actually had her version of The Police's King of Pain, big shocker, a cover version, on the list. But I could have also went with that haunting version of Uninvited. And the fact that you went with something from Jagged Little Pill, I think Head Over Feet might be the best Jagged Little Pill rendition on the Unplugged album.
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, if you want a fantastic cover of Uninvited, Red Sun Rising put one out, and it is fantastic.
Oh man, what a great band. I know they only had 2 albums and they're now reformed as The Violent, but oh, what a great group they were.
Yeah, no, I got a chance to see them in Philadelphia. It was like one of those festival shows, and they were like one of the first bands. Don't ever skip on the opening bands. They're the ones that are going to blow your mind with the fact that you've never heard them, and then you're going to want to hear them all the time.
Well, speaking about a song that I want to hear all the time, for my last song of the evening, now you've made it very easy for me, so thank you. And this performance might go down as one of the most powerful acoustic performances, to me, of all time. And some guy named John Paul Jones produced this CD, and he also plays bass on this live performance. The album came out the year I graduated high school, 1995. The album is called The Road Home. The band is Heart. And the song is, once again, a cover song. It was featured on episode 33. Wait, that's a cover song with Jay Sweet. Yes, it's a cover. I'm not going to get into that now, though. I'm just going to talk about the song. And we're going to go with Heart's version of Alone from The Road Home. Between the string section, Ann and Nancy's vocal harmonies, and this stripped down, slowed down arrangement of the song, where Ann's high notes are held out for lengths of time, just showing the world why she is one of the greatest female rock vocalists of all time. And I say that with authority. I mean, when you talk about the greatest rock singers of all time for a female perspective, if you don't include Ann Wilson on the list, I think you're doing something wrong. I don't make a lot of hot takes here, but Ann Wilson is one of the greatest female rock singers of all time. And this version gives me chills every single time I hear it. And then obviously that guy, John Paul Jones from some band called Led Zeppelin, playing bass and producing this. He brought such a unique feel to this performance. It just feels so like they're in your living room just playing for you. And her vocals cut through you like a knife. Oh my God, I got goosebumps just talking about it. So to close out my portion of the 90s Acoustic Unplugged from 1995's The Road Home, Heart's Alone.
No, you're right. Heart needed to be on the list. And they are a band I've never had a chance to see live. They're on the bucket of regret list of live concert that I haven't had a chance to see. But I know where I'm going to go. Because getting to this last song and looking at my list, I was dreading. Because there were two acts on my list that we hadn't touched on yet. And both slot into my favorite artists of all time list. And I'm just like, how the hell am I supposed to pick between these two? And I was sitting there going, please make this easy. Please make this easy. You made it easy. So thank you for that, because now I don't have to pick the acoustic version of Sister by the Nixons from their Scrapbook EP. Instead, I'm going to go off of the Live at Montreux 91-92 album from Tori Amos. Up there with Krista Berg as one of the artists I've seen probably the most of all time. And again, this is the guy who came on Playlist Wars to do an Anthrax episode. I've seen Tori Amos more than Anthrax. I've seen Tori Amos more than Queensryche. And by the way, I didn't pick a Queensryche song either, so it was really getting hard at this last one. But I'm going to go with Precious Things. It's a fantastic performance. And I will admit that off the To Venus and Back album is another fantastic version of that. But here, it's just Tori and a piano. And if you've ever had the chance to see that kind of performance from her, you are in for a treat. Now, unfortunately, she has a list of a long list of bootleg live CDs that she has on Spotify. And there were a number of covers on there that I could have gone with, but they were all released in the 2000s. At least here, it's Live at Montreux 91-92. So it kind of definitely puts a pin on things. But Precious Things, off of that Little Earthquakes album, it's really hard to find a bad song at all. There are some really, really good covers on disc 2. Her cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit. And since we talked about Led Zeppelin, there's their cover of Whole Lotta Love and Thank You. So if you love your covers, Tori Amos does some fantastic ones and they're on here. But for my money and for my last song, I finally get to pick a Tori Amos one. I'm going with Precious Things.
What a trio of powerhouse female vocalists to close this out. Alanis Morissette, Head Over Feet, Hearts Alone, and Tori Amos's Precious Things. I love it. I absolutely love it. And there you have it, folks. Side B of our ultimate 90s acoustic unplugged playlist, which kicked off with Kisses Coming Home, 10,000 Maniacs Because the Night, Counting Crows Rain King, Krista Berg's Snows of New York, Eric Clapton's Layla, Peter Gabriel and Youssou N'Dour's In Your Eyes, Stone Temple Pilots Plush, Alanis Morissette's Head Over Feet, Hearts Alone, and Tori Amos's Precious Things. Head over to myweeklymixtape.com to hear all the songs we've discussed in this mix through the playlist embedded on the episode page. Now, Jason, why don't you remind listeners where they can connect with you and check out It's Not That Bad and There Can Only Be One. We've talked about a bunch of the episodes throughout our discussion tonight. If they want to hear more, how can they do so?
Well, if you want to hear more of There Can Only Be One, as myself and a guest suffer through someone's discography and try to pick only one song, because that's a tough one at times. That is really tough. Or on the opposite weeks where we do spin, shuffle, skip, and we go through one album and pick 3 songs, a spin, a shuffle, and a skip. You could find us on social media at Only One Cast. And if you like your movies, where we talk about films that are unfairly maligned and have low critic scores, and we try to find the good things to say about them, you can find that show, It's Not That Bad, on social media at Not That Badcast. Or one-stop shopping, you can go to notthatbadcast.com where you can see all of our shows.
Jason, as always, I look forward to the next time having you on. It's always a blast, my friend.
Oh, you know that all you have to do is drop me a message and a topic, and I will be there within 24 hours, ready to go. I will say, though, this one was tough because not only did I not pick the Nixons, which I'm surprised at myself, and not only did I not pick Queensryche, and I'm surprised at myself, but in preparation for this episode, we had talked about how the album had to be on Spotify just to make the playlist a little bit easier for putting it on the website. So I need to point out one album that is not available on Spotify. And I was so looking forward to dropping this song because it would have been fantastic. But that album is not available, so I can't talk about it. But it was Trees Lounge live by Hayden, live at Convocation Hall. Now, if you've seen the movie Trees Lounge, written, starring, and directed by Steve Buscemi, it's a fantastic film. Hayden is one of those fantastic Canadian solo artists, and he has some great stuff. And Trees Lounge is the most electric tune that he had done at that time. The string quartet was actually orchestrated by another Canadian artist, Sarah Slean, and I was at that show. And when you hear Trees Lounge being played, you hear like one person in the crowd screaming. That's my wife, Carrie. She loves that song.
Oh, man. Now I feel bad. I should have let you pull the asterisk for that one.
No. We stuck to the rules. We live by the... It's kind of like There Can Only Be One. If we didn't talk about the Counting Crows live album, then I couldn't talk about Hayden live at Convocation Hall on this episode.
Fair enough, my friend. Thank you again, and look forward to the next one.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, there you have it, folks. Remember, you can find My Weekly Mixtape on almost all the social media haunts at My Weekly Mixtape. You can also head to myweeklymixtape.com to check out the full catalog of My Weekly Mixtape episodes. And if you like what you're hearing on the show, you can help me out by either telling a friend, leaving the show a 5-star review wherever you're tuning in, or becoming a Patreon mixtaper at patreon.com/My Weekly Mixtape. There you can find ad-free episodes of the show, chime in on future topics, become a future guest, and so much more. That's all for this week. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, enjoy the tunes.